And I'm Craig.
Craig, part 2 of the monster interview with Fred Mollin,
Yeah.
producer extraordinaire. But not only that, just one of the nicest, coolest dudes, man. I mean,
Took his time out in LA
yeah,
to ring us up, man.
God,
Unbelievable.
just
Hey,
such a cool guy.
let's play a game, Mark.
Hmm.
I'm going to name a song. You name a corresponding song. Galveston.
Wichita lineman,
Would you like to fly my beautiful balloon?
MacArthur Park.
Name another one.
Uh,
Highwayman. Got it.
oh
The
my
Highwayman.
gosh.
You know who wrote those, don't you? Of course you do. Let's hear it.
The incomparable Jimmy Webb.
And
Guess who's Jimmy Webb's producer is?
Well, I would probably be inclined to say that it's Fred Mollin, who we got on our show in part 2 episode coming up. What do you say, Mark?
Let's do it.
Well, it's an amazing track record. Do you read music?
I read it poorly. I mean, I can't score it, but I can read it.
Okay, and that was sort of where I was leading with encouraging people, because the world will tell you if you go to college and you get your degree and you do all the academics that you'll get a great job and prosper, and that's not true. And you don't even have to do that. Entrepreneurship is still the way to go. And in music with producers, engineers, Ed C. Ed C. I'm sure.
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah, Ed was just on our program. I've known Ed for almost 35 years now, and he told us his whole story about being totally self-learned, self-taught, didn't go to school for it. And that's the encouraging part. So take note, podcast listeners, you don't have to go the normal route. Just love what you do and go for it. So,
Well, and it takes talent, it takes determination,
Sure.
it takes an ability to believe in yourself so fully that no matter anything that people throw at you, it won't hurt you. It'll just keep, just make you stronger.
absolutely.
And you got to be tenacious, and you just got to believe in yourself. And, actually, I do believe that, sometimes the academic route can hurt you more than help you.
Agreed.
The one thing I'm really loving to do right now, I'm loving being this sort of visiting speaker, whatever, for a day or two at these different colleges and music schools, because I get to answer a ton of questions and tell a ton of stories, and I think I give the kids a chance to hear somebody who was actually in the trenches, and sometimes their teachers, their professors, are people who really haven't been in the trenches.
Correct.
right.
So I actually wind up giving them some pretty good info, and I love the ability to give back.
It's like they've never smelled the napalm, so to speak, from the battlefield. They don't know.
That's
That-
right.
Well, I
That's
think
cool.
that is so cool. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly on the aspect of, sometimes the old adage is, those who can do it and those who can't teach.
Teach
And
Jim.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago. And obviously, just from what you said just a minute ago, production and producing is your passion. What is it about the production process that just speaks to you so much? Because I mean, I would love to score a TV series, but I'm a songwriter. And I get that. I mean, I would love the challenge of scoring for TV because I think I could do it, but I'm a songwriter. I love writing songs. What is it about producing to you that just speaks so much louder than everything else?
Well, I think, from a very early age, like literally age 4, my mother was walking me down to the record store, and I'd buy my favorite record. So, um, I was always absolutely fascinated and, you know, just consumed by this disc I'd hold in my hand that music I loved, and the sounds on the record, and so I think from a very early age I just fell in love with recording. Now I'm not engineer. I'm not interested in the technical part of it,
Mhm.
but of getting music onto tape or onto computer these days, obviously. But getting music to be recorded and to get a great performance and to get and to make a great record. I'm such a fan of great records
Mhm.
that I probably in the back of my mind said, "Gee, one day I hope I can work on that side of the board and be and help somebody. At the same time, I want to be able to make a record and help choose the musicians and when that started to happen early on, I just realized, "Oh my God, I love this." And I love the fact that, it was sort of a playground for us, to really work on trying to make a great listening moment
Mhm.
for each track we would record. And so musically it was exciting. Recording these things was exciting. The technology now we had available to us, which I started making records in '74.
Yeah.
So now we went from 16 track to 24 track. And, there was a lot of really exciting technological changes. And so we just had a ball experimenting, but also working with great musicians and working with singer-songwriters and all sorts of artists. And it just felt like this is great. And also the pressure, I think the pressure, because I started wanting to be a performer, I don't think I could have handled the pressure of having to be a James Taylor all my
Mm,
life or to
yeah.
be a Neil Young or Jackson
Mhm.
Brown or all my
Mhm.
life. I don't think I could have handled that pressure or Billy Joel. Um, I liked being in the studio where no one's really around except for me and the artist and the musicians and the engineer, and we're just making music and, then I go to the next gig, and it just felt perfect to me because I got enough musical sort of stuff out of me with my arranging things and also sometimes a lot of times playing on things. And so I really felt like I was part of a big creative thing that I loved. And yet I felt the pressure was sort of low, which worked for me. And I don't think that the world of being a performer, for 40, 50 years, I mean, I've had great dinners with people like Billy Joel over the years, and I said to Billy, I said, how did you deal with, all these years of having to be so responsible to all these people who are working for you based on how you're going to sing that night, how you're going to play that night.
Yeah.
And he said it's tough. He just said it's tough. I do it because he said it's the only thing I know. He said, but it's tough.
That's
And I
amazing.
wasn't
Yeah.
that person. I don't think I had that kind of belief in my ability in that particular side of things. So to answer your question, I just fell in love with making records. And I still love my happiest days are when I'm in the studio with great musicians in Nashville and I'm ready to go and I'm on the floor with the guys and my engineers in the control room and we're there to make this album for an artist and we're all there to fulfill the artist's dream, that's the other thing. I can put my ego completely away when I make a record
Mhm.
and I can just work totally for that artist's vision. And if they don't have a vision, I help them create a vision. But it is thrilling to have the musicians on the floor for those couple of days of tracking, and that's the happiest days. Then the overdub stuff. I'm, you know, I've learned to be patient over the years. And it's not my favorite part.
Mm.
Doing lead vocals and then having to put the vocals together with comping and tuning and all sorts of stuff. There's a lot
Yeah.
of
Sure.
a lot of people who need it, and that's okay. We have the technology now, but um, I'm just to answer your question, Mark. I'm clearly happiest when I'm making records.
That is cool. Mark, I was going to mention, Fred is a perfect example of that old adage about being on both sides of the glass,
Mhm.
having that experience as a musician and a performer, and then coming to the backside. He understands the emotion, the challenges and the pressure of the musician. And I think one of the things that we've seen kind of a thread with the producers that we've had on our show. Kyle Lenning was one of them. He was on
He's
just
one of my
recently.
oldest friends. We
Yeah,
started we
great,
started our careers together in the same
great guy.
same time
And
period.
and of course, Ed, we talk about this, and part of it is, and by the way, do you know Pat Buchanan as well? You must know
Sure.
Pat.
Love
Yeah,
Pat.
so Pat was on as well. He's an old buddy. But
Love him.
one of the things, a thread that's been running through this is that the producer sets the tone and is able to pull out of the musician and just kind of set the whole mood in the, for the project.
Very much
And
so.
just encourage the fragile artist heart if they need it, can encourage it. But that's a very that's a gift right there. It is absolutely a gift.
Well, I mean, I think that I think what makes a great producer certainly is the ability to love your artist and to take care of your artist. And that means, musically, because I'm a musician and an arranger, I can help them on that. But also I need to be a cheerleader and a psychiatrist sometimes,
That's right.
Yes.
and I have to care. And I think that one of the great things of making records in Nashville is that unlike any other world of studio musicians, the studio musicians that we use in Nashville, who are the top musicians in the history of recording, um, they care about the artist too, and
You can tell.
they care about me, and there's no ego, and it's just like, what else can we do to please you? At the same time, we're virtuosic killers who can knock a track out in one take. Um, so it's this incredibly great place to make music because of that. But yes, to be on both sides of the glass helps me. I'm a musician, so that helps me. I know good producers who are not musicians, who just seem to know how to take care of things and to make good choices.
That is cool. So we mentioned, before we brought you on the show for an intro, we mentioned, a lot of the artists and the project that you've worked on. I want to mention a few here. Willie Nelson, Billy Joel, Carly Simon. See if anything snuck in that isn't real, but I'm just going to keep reading these. Vince Gill, Glenn Campbell, Crosby and Nash, Art Garfunkel, Jackson Brown, Linda Ronstadt. I'll take a breath and I'll be done in a minute. Michael McDonald, Sheryl Crow, Natalie Cole, Gloria Estefan, Billy Ray Cyrus, and Miley Cyrus, Chris Cornell. And this is just the short list. But just to read that, we're not talking about, you mentioned just kind of being pigeonholed into a certain type of music and this is it. Dude, this is not pigeonholed anywhere except in the universe. You got pigeonholed in the universe because
Yeah, maybe.
yeah, because I mean the difference between Chris Cornell and Willie Nelson is is pretty wide. And then all of them, they're all so diverse
But
and
you know what
different.
else? There are also a lot of those artists that you listed are iconic. I mean, they're not just, oh, that was yeah, he had a good career for 2 years or 3 years. We're talking about people who, Billy Joel, who set the standard for singer-songwriter. It's I mean, first off, kudos to you for dealing with that much ego at one time because I
Now a lot of these are duets, so for
mhm.
instance, I'd love to tell you that I've been making albums with all of these people,
Right.
but I've made albums with some of them,
Well,
but
yeah,
but
but
I've
you've worked
produced them
with them.
all as duet artists for sure.
Yeah,
Working with them.
and how do you you mentioned earlier about being a, psychiatrist or something every now and then for your artist. How do you deal with, uh, the dynamics of the different levels of ego or, 'cause I mean, now and I'll say this, I'm not picking on anybody because some of the biggest artists and people I've ever met are some of the nicest people I've ever met too. But, you have to deal with a lot of their life bleeding into their music, I'll say. I'll just put it that way. How do you deal with that?
Well, again, thank you for that question, Mark. I think that a lot of these artists you've mentioned, I produced duets with. I became known as sort of a guy who does duet production, and a lot of the artists that I were producing, they sometimes would say, "Gee, do you think Michael McDonald would sing on this?" And luckily, I've known Michael forever, and we're great pals. I mean, talking about great friends. And so calling Michael is, just put the dime in the phone and just ask Mike if he'll want to do this. And so there are those kind of people. But then, yes, there's the people that I've worked with only one time, and a lot of them, yes, are incredibly legendary characters. And I think it was the fact that so much of this was done in the middle to later part of my record production that I just think I just got good enough and secure enough that it didn't matter who I was going to be working with. I was completely starstruck by many, but they would never know it because I wanted to just be comfortable with them. They
Mhm.
didn't need somebody starstruck. They needed somebody who could speak their language and listen to them, and help produce this vocal.
Mm.
And so, you know, I never really, I've never had a bad experience in the duet world of producing all these people. As a matter of fact, they've been extraordinary experiences. Everyone, you know, you can ask me about any of them. I'll give you stories about all of them. But also, you know, even when I produce album projects for people like Johnny Mathis or, you know, Kristen Chenoweth or you know, I mean, I'm trying to think of who else is sort of legendary that I've produced. But anyway, bottom line is, you know, I've been for I produced Christopherson. I mean, I have a long list. I'll forget what I've done, but I can tell you that, you know, it's really so rare in my life that I come upon someone who's an asshole.
Mhm.
And one person was, and I did the album with them. And he's gone now, sadly. And he was just a great, great singer-songwriter, one of the most legendary singer-songwriters. Um, n- Very well known for being sort of a tough person to work with.
Mhm.
You know, he was actually supposed to be in the Eagles, and he didn't want to be in the band because he didn't like bands. So he wasn't a
Mhm.
team player. However, we made an incredibly great album, but it was really tough. You know, like I wanted to quit 3 or 4 times, you know. That was probably the only time in my entire career because, you know, a couple times things don't work out, but if they don't work out in record stuff or even in TV and film, you find out pretty quickly and you can say, "Hey, you know what? This isn't working." And you go, you know. On the project I'm talking about with the artist I'm talking about, I had uh, I'd made the deal for the artist. I found a label that wanted to make this particular record
Mm.
of this artist doing his most famous stuff for the first time, very unplugged, which was my concept. And so I got him the deal, and then halfway through the album, I wanted to quit because it was so awful. But I knew we were getting great stuff. It was just poisonous to work with. And he was a big drinker, you know. So
Mhm.
it was just a rough record. However, people love that record and hold it close to their hearts, you know, and I'm going to tell you who it is. So there you go. It's
Yeah.
JD Souther.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, and he's been gone,
And
obviously.
JD, we got to a
Yeah.
great place near the end. He passed away a couple years ago now, but um, we got to a great place near the end. But he was notoriously hard to work with, and I just simply was just another person who tried to produce him, who had to go through a lot of misery to get this wonderful record, which we did, which is called Natural History, and people hold that album really close to their heart. But and the nice thing was at the end of it, you know, JD came to me and he said, you know, I've never done a better record. I've never sounded better. He said, "You're amazing." And I said, "Well," I said, "Thank you," but I felt like saying, "And we'll never work together again."
You're amazing. You're an
I
asshole.
didn't say that, but I wanted to, you know.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, my lord.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's great. I need to mention Jimmy Webb.
Yes.
Jimmy Webb, you know, I'm almost your age. I'm 70, so we kind of grew up in the same, you know, I was just right behind you. My sister is in your generation, so I got to have all her great records for
Good.
free, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact. You know, didn't even have
Good
to go to
work.
the store to get them. But Jimmy Webb, you know, listening all the way back, I remember, especially strangely enough, when MacArthur Park came out. You know, you got a man who writes, and he kind of reminds me of you in a weird sort of way. He writes MacArthur
Yeah.
Park, and then he writes Galveston. You know, and then he'll write
Wichita lineman, and
Wichita Lineman. You're like,
yeah.
how are you going everywhere like that? That's crazy. You know,
Well, he
but
wrote all those songs before he was 21.
is that right?
Yeah.
See,
Wow.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. Well, he's obviously an icon. And are you still working with him, or
Yeah,
what's your?
it's so great because he's my longest running client, and he's also family at this point. I've worked with him since 1977, actually 78.
Wow. Yeah.
78, I produced Angel Heart, the first album I produced with him, and I've done 6 others, and, um, he is literally, you know, we're as close as brothers. Um, and I love Jimmy to death, and we're doing a new album right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
That's
he's,
exciting to
he's
hear.
one of America's greatest songwriters. He's really our Gershwin, and he's really our Irving Berlin. And he's just absolutely, every great songwriter, and from Paul Simon to Randy Newman to anyone you love, James Taylor, they look at Jimmy like, oh my God, he's the greatest, and he really is. I mean, he's just absolutely, in my opinion, one of the most important writers in the history of song.
I mean, the Highwaymen, a lot of listeners won't realize he wrote the Highwaymen.
Yes, but his version of the Highwaymen, and actually I've cut it 2 times with him.
Oh, have you?
So there's 3 versions of Jimmy doing the Highwaymen, and they're all spectacular. And as much as I love the fact that the Highwaymen became Willie and Chris and Johnny and the whole thing, I didn't love their record. It was a little too bunk tink, bunk tink. But where Jimmy's really, it's a musical bit of genius, that song, as well as lyrically. Go listen to Jimmy's versions of the Highwaymen.
We will.
Mm.
Hi, this is Craig with Songwriters Tales. Hey, be sure to go back and check out our episodes, like episodes 5 through 7, where we have the famous music publisher Rex Benson. He's had hits with Garth Brooks and Kenny Rogers and all kinds of people. You want to hear what he has to say.